This episode of Analog Resurgence brought to you by Skillshare. Stick around after the video to learn more.
Is anybody else really torn on their opinion on like Lomography film stuff out there? Or is that just me? Lomography seems to be one of those names in the film shooting world that either people really like or really don't like at all. They make a bunch of stuff, not just film stocks, but also cameras and lenses, crazy stuff, instant film cameras, Instax stuff, all sorts of things. I've never felt the big draw of their more experimental film stocks like Lomochrome Metropolis and Purple, and I'm not really interested in a lot of their black and white film stocks either because it's usually more expensive than I think it's worth all the time, and it's usually just rebranded stuff that maybe you can track down for somewhere cheaper. Things like Orwo N75 cinema film, you can get like big rolls of that or bulk load it and go through a little more work to get it, of course, but you can do that instead of buying the rolls of Lomography's Berlin film, which is the same, I believe. But Lomography does offer a basic lineup of color negative film stocks that are actually like not to be overlooked. Lomo 100, 400, and 800 are kind of basic color negative film stocks that have a really kind of consumer feel to them, a kind of classic look that is really reminiscent of Kodak films such as Gold and Ultramax. Lomo's color films are things that I really enjoy, and I think that they're really important for what they offer for film shooting. I've talked about the Lomo 400 and the 800 stuff before, and there's a lot of people who do claim that it is rebranded Kodak Ultramax or whatever Kodak puts in their 800 ISO disposable camera, and it might be. It definitely has some Kodak color characteristics, some warms and like the saturation of the stuff that you might see on their consumer things, or it might even be a slightly different custom emulsion that they order from Kodak in bulk because Lomography does so much business. And Lomo 100 is no different when it comes to this stuff. It is very reminiscent of some Kodak things, and some people I've read have even claimed that it is just Kodak Gold rated at 100, and I don't necessarily believe that, but it's a nice film regardless. Let's take a look at some basic examples of Lomography's 100 ISO color negative film and see if this Lomo stuff is maybe the film for you. Lomography 100 is like a casual 100 ISO color negative film that is closer to the warm colors of Kodak in comparison to like the greens, the magentas of Fuji's consumer stuff. It's in line with the consumer film characteristics though. Moderate contrast, colors that do sort of pop, and it is somewhat cheap. Lomo stuff of course will vary in price based on where you can find it, and for some it's easiest to buy it right off of the Lomo website, but for me, it's about $3 more than a roll of Kodak Gold, so it is priced just a bit more than some of the Kodak stuff. 100 ISO gives you that fine grain, and it's a sharp looking film in my experience with it as well. Nice for loading up when out walking, and it does Caucasian skin tones at least like pretty good justice. It does feel somewhat like a Kodak film, but I found Lomo 100 to feel much cooler in comparison to the warmer colors that I tend to associate with Kodak Gold or Kodak Color Plus. Lomo 100 has some like really pleasing blues to it, and it's a nice kind of cool film, and it is a little bit more subdued than you might be used to with a consumer style film, and I think it actually does stand out against some of these other offerings. I've read about people choosing it in place of Ektar, which is a Kodak Pro film that has a higher saturation and is usually favored for landscape shots, so it does offer a nice variety of things within the 100 ISO range. Variety is great. Variety is really important with color, and there's not always a ton of it. It also shares the same ISO as Pro Image 100 from Kodak, a film that, despite its name, is not actually a pro emulsion from Kodak like Portra and Ektar, and it's more in line with a consumer film stock. I like the Pro Image stuff, but I find that it's maybe a little bit more realistic and at least a little warmer for the colors in comparison to the bluer Lomo stuff, which does set itself apart. The 100 stuff does feel more unique against Lomo 400, which I felt was maybe too similar to Ultramax, enough that maybe it wasn't super worth choosing Lomo 400 over Kodak Ultramax when it really comes down to it and the choices are both available. Lomo 800 though is also a great film because there's not a lot of 800 ISO offerings out there, especially for consumer style stuff. I shot the Lomo 100 stuff at box speed and I had no problems with my shots, but it's got like a general flexibility that you see with most color negative stuff, so you could go over a bit with it and have some lighter images as well. I had some really nice shadow detail here on just this little still life setup I had set up to see how kind of like the colors look. So a good range in terms of what it can handle for exposure, and definitely a very cool kind of look to it. The Lomo stuff is easy to write off as either too expensive, which sometimes it is, or maybe as just being a basic rebrand, which sometimes it isn't. The 100 definitely feels unique enough against offerings such as Pro Image and Gold and Superior that it feels worth picking up and shooting. I think the cooler and at times more subdued color palette and contrast in a lot of the shots that I was getting with this stuff is probably really appealing for a lot of people, and you could probably just edit it, pass it off as Portrait 160 and just not tell anybody. But of course, for a lot of people, it does really come down to cost and what's available. And the Lomography stuff is not always carried on hand by local camera stores, which means you might have to order it. Whereas a lot of the Kodak things and the Fuji stocks, you can just kind of walk into a camera store that carries film of any kind and they'll probably have something on hand for you. The Lomo stuff is usually priced just a bit more than some of that stuff, or is often just kind of sold out altogether. Lomo 800 has definitely picked up a big audience in the last couple of years, and I know it goes intermittently through shortages where it's not stocked or not available. It's sold out on the website, and it is not always the easiest to find. The other noteworthy thing about the Lomography color negative stocks is that they make 100, 400, and 800 in both 35mm and 120 medium format, which means that they offer a cheap consumer style film stock for color for shooting in medium format. Whereas in comparison, Kodak's Gold, Ultramax, Pro Image, Color Plus, and Fuji's C200 and Superior are all only 35mm consumer films. I'm a big fan of having options like that in medium format because it means that you can explore the format a little bit more, you can do it cheaper, it can be a little more casual, and anytime that you can kind of shoot color and avoid having to shell out for portrait when you don't need to, that's a big plus. Here in Canada, Canadian dollars of course, I can pay $13 for a roll of like Lomo 800 in medium format. Whereas Portra 800 in 120 now runs me $20, which is a $7 difference. And that's a big difference, especially if you just want to kind of casually shoot medium format or have fun, especially if you're shooting something like 6x7 or 6x9, something where you're not getting that many shots on a single roll. It is a great alternative if you can live without the absolute thrill of shooting Kodak's portrait. That Lomography color stuff definitely has value. The Metropolis and Purple are not necessarily for me, but long live somewhat cheap color negative film stock options in a variety of formats. Big thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video today. Skillshare is a massive online learning community that is dedicated to offering a huge variety of courses covering an enormous amount of topics so that you can explore and broaden your horizons and your creativity. It's curated and organized really well and helps you to learn and understand and grow different skills. It has no ads and it's always launching brand new premium content. It's also less than $10 a month with an annual subscription, and you can use it if you're interested in learning more about programs like Premiere Pro and After Effects and Photoshop, all the stuff I use in these videos, as well as learning more about such a huge variety of creative topics and subjects. So many of the skills and the programs that I use to create the videos that you're watching are things that you can learn so much about by checking out Skillshare. So the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description of this video will get a free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity. Thank you all so much for watching and checking this out. You can find information in the description down below for the Patreon and the PO Box if you are interested. If you're able to support the channel and you want to send stuff along for the channel for shooting or exploring or video related stuff. Also, merch exists now. So if you love the channel that much, or if you hate it and you want to wear it ironically, you can find a link to that in the description below. All the support for this stuff goes a really long way. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.